My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak with you about our nation's unprecedented response to the coronavirus outbreak that started in China and is now spreading throughout the world. Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home. Because the critical thing we must do to stop the disease spreading between households. That is why people will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes. Shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible. One form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk or cycle, alone or with members of your household. Any medical need to provide care or to help a vulnerable person, and travelling to and from work, but only where this is absolutely necessary and cannot be done from home. That's all. These are the only reasons you should leave your home. You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should say no. You should not be meeting family members who do not live in your home. You should not be going shopping except for essentials like food and medicine. And you should do this as little as you can. And use food delivery services where you can. If you don't follow the rules, the police will have the powers to enforce them, including through fines and dispersing gatherings.
That the first coronavirus vaccine has been approved for use in the UK by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency.
The Prime Minister has confirmed that the UK government will consider the case for the introduction of so-called vaccine passports. The document could take the form of a vaccine certificate or proof of COVID status, and the NHS mobile app could be modified to carry that information.
A nation is more overtly political than an ethnic group. It has been described as a fully mobilized or institutionalized ethnic group or groups. The word nation can also refer to a group of people or many different groups living in or belonging to one place, who share a history, traditions, culture and languages, even if the group does not have a country of its own or lives away from its place of origin. People belong to a nation, share a common identity, and think of themselves as one body of people, and the word people is a plurality of persons considered as a whole, as is the case within an ethnic group, nation, or public of a polity. A government is the political system by which a country or nation is administered and regulated. In the case of this broad associative definition, a government normally consists of legislature, executive, and judiciary. An empire consists of a central state that also controls a large amount of territories and often diverse populations. Empires rise and grow as they expand power and influence, and can fall if they lose control of too much territory or are overthrown. Globally, an empire state is a monarchy form of government in which supreme power is absolutely or nominally lodged in an individual who is the head of state, usually for life or until abdication by a monarch or empire head of monarchy. An empire is always a monarchy. There are two types of monarchy: constitutional monarchy and absolute monarchy. In a constitutional monarchy, monarchs are bound to exercise their powers and authorities within prescribed and established legal framework, and their duties are often ceremonial. In absolute monarchy, monarchs hold absolute power. The capital. According to the report of the British charity Oxfam, the wealth of the world is divided in the following way. The world's richest 1% of people's wealth is equal to the total wealth of the remaining 99% of people. Some decided to call the 1% the owners. The owners are mostly recognised by their brands and their effects on us in particular. Pharmaceutical, weapons, banking and technology industries. And yes, those are the ones who control their headlines too. This is no secret because they are not even hiding it anymore. Some people even say they have caused all the wars in the world. Now we know all our members, we must next look at the systems. The current old system. The concept of a superpower is a relatively recent addition to the lexicon of political science. It was the first used to describe the Roman, Ottoman, and then recent one British empires. However, it became commonly used as a concept only after World War II. The World War II was just the beginning of a new era for all countries, and defined by the decline of all European colonial empires and the simultaneous rise of two superpowers, the Soviet Union, USSR, and the United States, USA. Allies during the World War II, the US and the USSR became competitors on the world stage and engaged in so-called the Cold War. Because it never resulted in overt or declared total war between the two powers, but it was instead characterized by espionage, political subversion, and proxy war. Western Europe and Japan were built through the American Marshall Plan, whereas Central and Eastern Europe fell under the Soviet sphere of influence and eventuality. Behind an Iron Curtain, Europe was divided into a US-led Western Bloc and a Soviet-led Eastern Bloc. Internationally, alliances with the two blocs gradually shifted, with some nations trying to stay out of the Cold War through non-aligned movement. The war also saw a nuclear arms race between the two superpowers. Part of the reason that the Cold War never became a hot war was that the Soviet Union and the United States had nuclear deterrence against each other, leading to a mutually assured destruction standoff. The consequences of the World War II and the new coming Cold War caused authorities so much debt and pain, so that is why the following organizations and agreements were made. World Bank, July 1944. Bretton Woods Agreements Act, July 1945. United Nations, September 1945. International Monetary Fund, IMF, December 1945. World Health Organization, April 1948. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, April 1949. United Nations Industrial Development Organization, 1966. For some, it was a victory, which is why scholars called it the golden age of capitalism. Many more organizations were created, and agreements were made. Bankers have lent authorities so much money, which resulted in the privatization of government sectors. In March 1951, the system's policy independence from the Treasury was accomplished with the formal agreement between the Treasury and the system, known as the Treasury Federal Reserve Accord. Similar agreements were also made around the world between the parties, giving the system owners the power they needed, which brought us to this state. The end of World War II also increased the rate of decolonization from the great powers, with independence being granted to the countries such as India from the United Kingdom, Indonesia from the Netherlands, and the Philippines from the US. In addition, a number of Arab nations, primarily from specific rights, which had been granted to great powers from League of Nations mandates in the post-World War II era, but often having existed de facto well before this time. Independence for the nation of sub-Saharan Africa also came after because the capital system started to take over the negotiations. The system's Organization for International Cooperation and Diplomacy later evolved into European Economic Community and ultimately into the current European Union. This effort primarily begun as an attempt to avoid another war between Germany and France by economic cooperation and integration, and a common market for important natural resources. These two European countries are still in great competition to take the lead of the EU, and after the UK's departure from the EU, apart from the Brexit deal, many negotiations and agreements are taking place between the EU countries in order to have a new internal system. We must certainly look at the new coming international trade and military agreements, which we'll cover in a different video. The first question is, what do we call a superpower or world empire? A state that possesses military or economic power, or both, having vastly superior influences to that of other states, is named a superpower. Globally, a world empire is a state that cannot be ignored on the world stage, and without its cooperation, no world problem can be solved. During the Cold War, for instance, the United States could not intervene in world affairs without taking into account the position of the USSR, and vice versa. The fact that both of these states had superpower status, however, did not make them equal. Indeed, the United States was more powerful than the USSR, according to most criteria, like military, economic, and many more. A superpower also draws its power from a superior economy, as well as the capacity to influence other states and international institutions. And we can say it's a soft power. Superpowers conceive their own interests in global terms and directly shape world events. Meanwhile, the term superpower is most often used to describe a state whose overall power is preeminent. It is sometimes used more restrictively to designate a state whose power is preeminent in one specific area. For example, a military superpower, an economic superpower, etc. So the next thing we need to look at is what do all members own exactly, and who is more likely to be new ruler of all? Some people own assets, properties, money, job, titles, knowledge of history, and a bit of the future. But most importantly, the numbers, and there are billions of us living around the world with freedom to a certain extent. The authorities own the Treasury, some assets, and the Ministry of Defence and other departments of tools. The owners own the knowledge of the unknown, the capacity to produce, the markets to sell, the media to explain, the technology to make it happen, the money to buy. Most of all the sectors. The list goes on. But the most important thing is that they also own a portion of people and authorities, which we can clearly see when we look at the increasing number of private sectors and the life dependency of the authorities and people. We are not talking about individual traitors, we are talking about everyday people who have no choice but to serve the owners. This brings us to the next question. What exactly is the new system? Taking control of people's freedom seems to be the key argument point by some. As we see, the new WhatsApp rules is one example. It's all about using the technology. It seems to be offering us all comfort and happiness, promising us that our lives will be much easier, so they are bringing it with the fourth revolution of the world, which represents a fundamental change in the way we live, work, and relate to one another. It is a new chapter in human development, enabled by extraordinary technology advances, commiserate with those past revolutions. Economic power used to be a tool to control the technology, but now the owners have invested in it so much and it's advanced to the degree which makes new coming technologies the supreme tool to control not only the economy, but everything and everyone, anywhere by the fourth revolution. This is characterized by the function of the digital, biological and physical worlds, as well as the growing utilization of new technologies, such as artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotics, 3D printing, the Internet of Things, and advanced wireless technologies, among others, which has ushered a new era of economic disruption with uncertain socio-economic consequences for the world. But how are they going to do it? There has to be a reason or an excuse for all of this. Well, from what we can see, global warming is real and everyone is concerned about it. But they will use it as an excuse to implement the new technologies and new ways to control our lives. Their argument would be that the new technology will come with the fourth revolution and has many benefits. That is to say, it will reduce crime and make life more comfortable. However, everything in life has advantages and disadvantages, as we all know. So, if the advantages are improving our life standard by these new technologies, what are the disadvantages? We do not need to answer this question, we just need to look around us and see what's been happening since COVID-19. Product quality, quantity and measure have been decreased, for example. Beverages and foods mostly come in smaller portions nowadays in Europe. The 2-litre drinks are now 1.5 litres, but they did not decrease the price. In other words, they keep the same price, but now even its price has gone up. You will own nothing and you will be happy. How does that work? It's all happening and we are right in the middle of it. The owners are getting stronger than ever, outruling the government. The negotiations between the two are still going on and will do so for some time, and disagreements could cause conflicts. As the UK General Sir Nick Carter stated, COVID-19 can spark World War III. But what does COVID-19 have to do with World War III? Why did Trump pull all American funds from the World Health Organization and seize all USA participation from the global warming Paris Agreement? These are the key questions we need to ask ourselves, but it seems some authorities around the world are asking such questions because they have been cornered to negotiate. predictions for the world's next superpower. World powers have always changed every 100 years or so, and now we are all hearing and thinking that China will be the next one, right? With the transformation of China into an economic powerhouse, there have been continued debates on whether it can be expected not only to dominate Asia, but also to compete with the United States, which is another global superpower. The idea of the USA losing its place to China is not going to happen as expected. Instead, there will be many win-win situations, not only between these two countries, but also between some other important powers around the world, which could also mean the USA losing some forms of its power to others, as things are going to be shared and given accordingly. So this idea of China becoming the next superpower like today's USA is wrong, because what do the fluctuations in China's capital market mean for the global economy? As can be seen in the recent stock market slide, capital markets outside of China were impacted but quickly rebounded. Make no mistake, whatever happens in China, it certainly ripples across the globe. But until China can stabilize its economy and liberate domestic policies, China in actual terms will not become a one true global power. China is pumping money into countries all over the globe, and those investments come with strings attached. As China expands its foothold into Africa, Middle East, Australia, and further into Asia, they may find they will not be able to sustain that type of expansion if the economy at home is not stable. That being said, we must remember that whoever controls the economy controls the world theory does not apply to the new world rules. The word economy is about to be replaced by technology to control it all. As for the superpowers around the world, they will still exist and serve their owners' needs for their future plans, if the owner's theory works out. As far as the nations are concerned, there is not much we can do other than making each other aware of the situation, and hope that our authorities do the best for us all. And we will certainly see worldwide conflicts during these negotiations between the owners and the patriots. Initially within the next 5 years, and finally within the next 20 years, which is when today's world system will be fully replaced. So let's wait and see if this system fails due to Chinese error during its changeover as predicted by the others, who believe that history repeats itself and the owners are living their prime days. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, subscribe and support our channel so we can make more videos like this. Stay safe and stay tuned.